in that conversation, what we saw was a customer chat in. We immediately routed to a human because someone was available. The human then stepped in. It was a question about their VX520, their credit card terminal, and all the receipts were printing blank. And so in this case, just chatting with a live agent, they did a little bit of troubleshooting that helped the customer understand that sometimes the paper roll can be inserted backwards or upside down. So it feeds out the wrong end, your paper is going to print incorrectly. But as we go from that conversation and we come into this view, this is what an agent might see when they open up the conversation or the CX manager screen. And so this could have just as likely been a conversation with an AI agent, with a virtual assistant or a chatbot. If you had knowledge on how to troubleshoot a printer not putting paper in the correct way, this could be a conversation with a bot. And when a human actually comes in and opens up the conversation, there's a lot of context to read before they can even respond with the next message. So one place that becomes really valuable is as these conversations can be long. You could chat with the virtual assistant for 10 minutes, 20 minutes before it ever gets handed off to a live human. When it does get handed off to a human, they expect a response to be quick. So instead of having to go through and read every single message back and forth about what was said between the two, whether two live humans or whether it was a chat bot and a customer, we have added a create summary functionality. This is a generative AI functionality that leverages GPT, and it actually takes all the context of the conversations and who said what in the conversation, from any human talking versus any chatbot talking versus a customer talking. It takes the context of who the customer is. You can see Vivid Technology Solutions over on the left-hand side, as well as any notes that were added or any comments that were added by teams that interacted with this chat engagement. And so when we go ahead and click on the summarize case action, it'll take all that context that it's given, and it will generate a summary for this case. These summaries can be fine-tuned by your organization. So you can control the length of the summary. You can control what AI LLMs that it's using to generate the summary based on quality or even preference or security. You can add in prompts if you want your summary to be short and fact-based, or if you want your summaries to be long and verbose. You can control that when designing the prompts for your organization. When you do click summary, these summaries are generated on the fly. It takes a few seconds to create the summary, but then it saves down to this interaction. So any future person that comes to this case can see these summaries right there in the details tab and the events tab when they open up the case. As you can see here, the summary was created. We'll expand out the box a little bit so you can see more of the summary. And this talks about how the customer reported that their receipts were printing blank after replacing the receipt printer on their VX520. The agent suggested that the paper may have been loaded incorrectly and asked the customer to double check if it was feeding from the bottom. The agent explained that loading the paper the wrong way could cause blank receipts and advised the customer to reverse the paper and attempt to print the test receipt. After reversing the paper, the issue was resolved and the customer thanked the agent for the help. The agent also reminded the customer about the importance of the correct paper orientation for proper printing. In this case, is titled blank receipts, but no further information in the conversation related to this case was provided. So as you can see, this was a summary generated prior to actually resolving and closing out this case. But it's interesting because it took both sides of the conversation. It could differentiate between what the customer said and what the internal agent said. It has the ability to determine multi-party conversations and summarize them accordingly. It could tell you what the customer asked for and what their problem was, what the agent did to address and resolve that problem. And if we had resolved it prior to generating the summary, it could tell you what the resolution was. What was the outcome? Did it get escalated? Is there more work needed, or was the case resolved and it was completed for the customer? So these summaries become really valuable when either you want to come in and get the summary before responding to a long chain, and we'll show you an example of an email chain here, or if maybe it got escalated to you and there's already been a bunch of notes and working on the case, instead of having to read through lots and lots of historical comments and notes and conversations, you can just click create summary and get a sense of what happened prior to it being sent over to you. Once you generate the summary, you may also want to edit it. Maybe you want to add your own notes, your own flair, your own tweak to the summary for the next person to read. You can come in here, you can edit the case directly, you can delete parts or add parts, and then you can go ahead and save that summary down to the case for the rest of the people to see. At any point in time, you can also click the regenerate button in the top and get a full new summary. Time you get a summary, it can be slightly different. It'll pull in the same data, but because we're using generative AI, what the summary given can actually fluctuate from time to time. So I won't go ahead and read this whole thing, but even right off the bat, you can see the summary is slightly different compared to the last one, but it still is able to identify that the agent is talking in one part of the conversation, the customer is talking about the other, the problem was successfully resolved, and what they did to actually get that problem resolved, and the troubleshooting included. So that's a bit about our case summarization Gen AI feature. We will also show this for email. This works across any communication channel. So it works across chats coming in from your website, from mobile. It works off email threads, even multi-party threads. It even works when you have multiple conversation threads. So as you know, in our communications panel, in the third panel, you can have chat threads next to email chat threads, next to SMS threads. It can pull in the context of all of those while still keeping the different threads in mind and summarizing what happened for each different party as part of those conversations. So maybe now we'll pause on this live chat interaction, and we'll switch over to what it looks like when you have an email case. And maybe there's an email chain that could last hours, days, even weeks. It could span multiple parties, a lot of back and forth. We know email chains can often be slower to resolve, but here we see we might have 10 or 15 email threads back and forth between Tim and Sarah. You could individually go through and click each one, expand, see what the message was, and really understand what's going on with this by reading every single email. Or you could come in, because you're the one that it was assigned to, you have to respond next, and just click Create Summary. You come up to Create Summary, and it will take all these conversations that happen on this email thread. Again, tied back to the customer, we have Fruit Fusion Delights over on the left, as you can see. We have Sarah Klink as the contact in this customer. And so I, as the agent coming into this summary, I spin up a quick summary, and I can get everything going on with the summary as it comes in. I'll also note while this loading, it does, depending on the amount of data, the summary can take anywhere from 10 seconds to a minute to generate. So you can leave the screen and go do something else and come back, and it will be generated, but we'll stay on the screen for this demo. But we'll also notice that what we do on the security side is we won't pass any sensitive information outside of our application. And so we de-identify any personal information like names or like IDs or phone numbers or emails. We de-identify it. We pass it to the large language models. We get the generative summary, and we re-identify it on the way back in. So it feels like you get all the data coming from the conversation, even though we're not actually sending personalized information outside of the system. So here we can say, let's take a look at this summary that was generated from this email thread. Sarah Klink from Fusion, again, it identifies the customer contact and the customer they're contacting from. Contacted ABC Bank. In this case, this is the organization that we are a part of, for assistance about adding a new drink called Funky Monkey to their Clover Pause system. ABC Bank, and this is the demo organization, provided a step-by-step guide on creating the drink, setting up the modifier group, and advising Sarah to set the single choice to ensure that customers can only choose one milk type. Sarah successfully followed the steps, but needed clarification on restricting customers to selecting only one milk type. ABC Bank, again, my organization, a demo, explained that Sarah could allow multiple selections options in the modifier group, settings, and suggested testing the setup. ABC Bank also mentioned that Sarah has the option to customize the names of the milk options if desired. In the internal notes, it's mentioned that a customer has requested to add a new drink with a menu with specific details about ingredients, price, and sizes. Which is, if you look up in column 3, there's an internal tab where there was actually an internal conversation going on at the same time that pulled into this thread as well. Internal note was added by Tim Martin, the agent working on this, where he actually added an internal note, and the summary can actually take that into context. So from the customer-facing conversation, if you go back to the summary, you'll see that it can actually switch between here's what happened with a customer. And as I was saying, it said in the internal notes, which is a note added onto the timeline, it's mentioned that the customer, what they actually requested for. So this was the agent actually leaving a note on the case as they were helping the customer with their problem. The agent acknowledged the request and mentioned forwarding it to the appropriate department for consideration with no further actions at this time. Again, the case has not been resolved. This is an in-flight interaction. There was no resolution because it's still open-ended. So with no further actions, here I am. I just got the whole summary of everything that happened to date. I have the internal notes. I can come and just look at the last message and see if there's anything else I need to do. If not, the next action may be to resolve the case because everything was completed. So this summarization, especially for these long email chains that can span multiple organizations, they can go on for days, weeks, or even months on a single case across email. This allows you to get that quick insight into what's happening, gets you up to speed without spending all the time reading every single back and forth between all the parties involved. And like I mentioned, at any point in time, you can go back to the summary and you can generate a new one. So maybe you generated a summary a week ago, there's a few more back and forths, you brought in a new party, they come in, they hit the generate summary, they get an up-to-date summary of exactly what happened throughout the life of this interaction. So we'll go ahead and case is done. We will go and resolve this case. And if we updated and generated the summary again, it'll show that the case had been resolved and there was no further action needed on this customer support ticket.